All right. So in today's armchair GM realm, we're all guilty of that. Sportsnet's got an article up. I want to do a bit of a setup here. I don't talk about trade negotiations, speculations on my channel. A lot of people will say, what do you think of? Would you trade? And I tell you whether or not I would trade a player if I was a GM. I don't speculate on what you get back. I will say if I think a player doesn't have any market value, I'll say it. But I stay out because I'm not a general manager, and I don't perceive myself as being above any other general manager either. And for all the criticism that certain GMs in the league take, they're GMs. I'm not. So at this time of year, we start getting towards trades because trade deadline is coming up. Pretty sure it's February. And so coming out of the Christmas break and then heading towards All-Star weekend, you start thinking, well, who's up for being traded? There's an article on the Sportsnet site, which I'm going to link into the description on this because it angers me. And the setup is this. The article treats it like there are currently 120 top four defensemen in the league who are worthy 120 top four defensemen. And because of that, it makes all of them equal. So I'm going to set this up with a question to you guys. And as I read through this article, I want you to consider two things. One, is every team's top four defenseman group equal? And if not, do you identify the best top four in the league and say that's what we're striving for? That's what the GM should be striving to have? This article doesn't do either of those things. This article goes, and it oversimplifies everything. And it is armchair GMing and laziness. And I know it's that time of year, but my God, if I could sit down and I can do videos that I do my best to still be as insightful as I can be with the knowledge I have from magazines, books, from my brain, from games I've watched, then I don't understand why guys writing articles can't do the same. So this is an article. It's right on the Sportsnet homepage right now. Top four NHL defensemen are easier to acquire than you think. Right off the bat, it's assuming you don't know how to acquire a top four defenseman. And he does. So, and there's also something else in here. I'm going to have this out because this is the kind of thing that just drives me nuts. I don't mind if you guys come onto my channel and say, do you think you should trade this for this? Odds are I'm going to disagree with any trade that's made because that's just sort of what you do. Let me take a look here. Because there's one in here that he mentions. And I know what they were doing when they did it. So I want to find it. And find it while you guys are watching me here. 12, 13, 11, 12. I'm going to pause this and I'm going to find a magazine because this is the kind of thing that drives me nuts. I'm going to find a magazine where this is discussed. 1 second. Okay, now while paused, I got even angrier at this article. Brent Burns is a good example of this trend. Brent Burns, second team All-Star, blah, 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 traded at the age of 26. It's tempting to think the Wild didn't know what they were getting. It's hard to excuse the deal in which they acquired Charlie Coyle. So the way that's phrased, Minnesota gave up Brent Burns to San Jose for Charlie Coyle. That is incorrect. Sorry, it's kind of crazy here today. Well, the kids are rambunctious. And yeah. So Brent Burns was traded to San Jose by Minnesota with Minnesota's second-round pick. It was later moved to Nashville for Pontus Aberg. for Devin Setaguchi, Charlie Coyle, and San Jose's first-round pick Zach Phillips in the 2011 entry draft. Now, let's go take a look at Setaguchi, shall we? Because I'm sorry, it's one of those things where Setaguchi qualifies as retired in this magazine because he came out of retirement and yeah. Let's go take a look here. Minnesota. I found an 11-12 magazine. So this is where guys fall apart, is that I have a magazine from the year that they're talking about, where Brent Burns was acquired for nothing. It was nothing. Nothing. Setaguchi was coming off of a season where he had 22 goals, 41 points. Charlie Coyle was still a prospect, and they got a #1 draft pick for it. So they gave up a 20-goal scorer, a prospect who's become a 20-goal scorer, and a first-rounder. Yes, that first-rounder became Zach Phillips that didn't succeed, but it was a first-rounder. And I should have looked. San Jose was coming out of a season where they had finished, this is predicting first in their division. They had been first in 2011, 5th overall in the NHL. So that's a mid-20s draft pick that they thought they were trading. That's not nothing. So right away, the article is just full of crap. It's just full of crap. Let's keep going. Anton Strawman's another famous recent example. Miscalculation, an analytics darling going back to Columbus. He bounced around the league and was let go by the Rangers in the summer of 2014. Tampa signed him to a 5-year deal as an unrestricted free agent to the insanely low cap hit of $4.5 million. And he's been an exceptional top player defenseman with the Bolts ever since. Okay, Strawman. Let's look up Strawman, since apparently he is this fantastic top defenseman. I'm not saying anything against Strawman. Don't put words in my mouth. Strawman's been good. Good. But insanely low cap hit. Keep that in mind. Anton Strawman, insanely low cap hit. His last year with the Rangers, he played 81 games, had 1 goal, 13 points. He played 19 and a half minutes a game, so it is not like the Rangers weren't playing him. The season before that, he had 7 points in 48 games. The season before, they had 18 points in 53 games. So his offense was dwindling, and his ice time was actually going up. It went from 17 minutes to 18 minutes to 19 minutes. In Tampa, 21 minutes, 57 seconds, 39 points in 82 games. And last year he had 34 points in 73 games, 22 minutes and 5 seconds of ice time. This year he's on pace for about 26 or 27 points. He signed a deal for 4 years with Tampa for $4.5 million a year. After a season he had 1 goal, 13 points, for an insanely low cap hit of $4.5 million. $4.5 million, and it's an insanely low cap hit. Insanely low. 1 second. I happen to have a magazine from 14-15 right here at my disposal. Anton Strawman, this is the year he was acquired from the Rangers. He logged the 3rd most ice time among Rangers defensemen on a sound pairing with Mark Stahl. That was a notable step up for the smooth skating Swede, who wasn't staggered by the increased workload. He navigated the playoff turbulence with grace and composure. A total absence of power play duty crushed his numbers. So, he had a $1.7 million cap hit the year before he signed in Tampa for $4.5 million. I'm not saying it's not a good deal right now. I'm saying there was high risk when Tampa signed him. Tampa had finished 2nd in their division, 3rd in the conference that year. And there's not a whole lot said in here about, oh, well, they've added Strawman, so, they're set. So, it's ridiculous. Just ridiculous. Montreal's Jeff Petrie fits the bill, too. His career started in Edmonton, and from a young age, he had the thankless job of playing top-pairing matchups on the worst team in the NHL. That obscured his value at the 2015 trade deadline. when he was acquired for a song, as they say, second-round draft pick. Oh, damn you for making me do work. Okay, so was it a good trade for Edmonton? No. He had 15 points in 59 games. At that point, he had 7 points in 19 for Montreal. Last year, he had some injury problems, 16 points in 51 games. He was playing 20 minutes and 57 seconds a night in Edmonton the year he got traded. He's been 21-21 in Montreal. He was a top 4 defenseman in Edmonton, too. He's now playing all situations in more than 22 minutes a night as the team's second most used defender. Yeah, Markov's getting hurt. You can't cherry pick your numbers. You can't. And he's cherry picking numbers in this article. If these sound like aberrations or not, most defensemen playing top 4 minutes in the league today were acquired via trade or free agency rather than being homegrown prospects. And then he gets into talking about top 4 defensemen, and he talks about number 1 defensemen. Sometimes you can just pay for them, like Suter did in Minnesota. Suter was not considered a number 1 defenseman when Minnesota acquired him. Chara in Boston. Zdeno Chara. Let's get into Chara. The Ottawa Senators had a choice: keep Redden or Chara at the time. And Chara was considered the more long shot of the two. Chara's last season in Ottawa, he had 43 points, 16 goals, 135 penalty minutes. All that matches up. But Redden was damn good at that point. Nobody knew Redden was going to fall off a cliff. His first season in Boston, Chara had 43 points, 11 goals, and everybody was calling for the head of Peter Chiarelli because he didn't perform as well as he did in Ottawa. And Boston missed the playoffs that first year. And then he got 51 points the year after. The team around him got better, and suddenly things started looking up. But it's funny how that works. That he's now a number 1 defenseman, but at the time the trade took place, both in the case of Chara and Suter, they were both viewed as number 2 guys behind Redden and Weber, and it didn't work out that way. Outside of that number 1 position, NHL teams really don't have much excuse for failure to find talent. Half of all number 2, 3 defensemen landed with their current teams after a trade or July 1st signing. Again, this article is stating that number 2, 3 defensemen on all 30 teams must be equivalent. They must be all equal. Ridiculous. The difficulty isn't players aren't available. The real trouble is figuring out which players will be able to handle top 4 minutes, identifying the Petries and Strawmans. It's pretty simple since both of them were playing top 4 minutes before they were acquired. Like the one, and separating them from poorer contracts like the one handed to Bieksa and Orpik. Bieksa is on the downside of his career, and Orpik was never, a top flight defenseman. Good hitter, decent depth guy, not a top flight defenseman. The obvious name out there right now is Jacob Trouba, and he should be available for trade. For what? Nowhere in the article does he say what exactly you're going to be able to give up to get Trouba, because there's teams out there listening right now, reading this article, like, tell us what's up. Another commonly cited name is potentially available is Dougie Hamilton, whose shot metrics are incredible. Yeah, and since Calgary's back in the playoffs, Dougie Hamilton is not available. Dougie Hamilton's availability was only based on Calgary being terrible. If Calgary's not terrible, Dougie Hamilton is not available. Period. Teams are not handing away guys like this. Anaheim has a surplus of defensemen, particularly with Shea Theodore constantly pushing for minutes. Something has to give there, and increasingly it looks like Cam Fowler won't be the one on the move. Either Hampus Lindholm or Josh Manson would be a great addition to any blue line, with Lindholm in particular boasting underlying numbers that scream elite level talent. They're not trading Lindholm. Anaheim's season turning around was directly a result of Lindholm and Raquel signing and shoring up their depth. They're not trading Lindholm. Hampus Lindholm is not available right now from Anaheim for any price. I've watched enough Anaheim games lately to know Lindholm is an elite talent. You don't need to look at the underlying numbers. You need to open your eyes. One thing I always find funny is an analytics guy will say, oh, you should see this guy. He's really good. I know. I watch hockey games. I don't need to see all those charts. I can see in a game who a good player is. A good example of that's Victor Arvidsson in Nashville. Everybody's falling all over themselves about how good Arvidsson's playing this year and how he's on pace for about 50 points. If you watch my playoff videos from last spring, every time I watched a Nashville game, I gushed on here about how great Arvidsson was. and he had 1 goal in 14 games. He had 2 points. I looked at the underlying numbers being my eyeballs, and my eyeballs told me he was a pretty good player. Turns out my eyeballs were right. To have an article that makes it seem so simplistic, it's ridiculous. On the cheap side of the spectrum, Edmonton's Brandon Davidson's an interesting possibility. He's young, was excellent in any situation last season, boasts a varied skill set, and is an obvious potential casualty to expansion. I said Davidson to Vegas right now. I don't think he's available. But Edmonton's not trading him right now. Edmonton's in a playoff spot. They want a guy like Davidson. Free agency is pretty shallow past the obvious names, Shattenkirk and Alzner. Alzner will not reach free agency. There's no way he's leaving Washington. Shattenkirk, I don't think he reaches free agency either. But Cody Franzen remains intriguing. Not really. He has obvious weaknesses, and then in brackets says speed. Okay, so right there, you've got a problem. How are the teams that are playing right now and playing really well winning? Speed is a major factor. Speed and talent win games. Cody Franzen's not a fast skater. That's why he waited so long to get a contract this year, or last year, because he's not that fast. You know, Pittsburgh wouldn't grab Franzen as far as I could tell anyways. And they say, this is the funny thing too, he's big, has long experience against tough opponents, and has offensive abilities that haven't been given much of a chance buried behind Ristolainen and Zach Bogosian. If you're buried behind Bogosian, you're probably not an elite top 4 defenseman. If you're bottom 2 on the Buffalo blue line, you're probably not going to be top 4 in Columbus right now or Minnesota. So what contending team is gonna, and what are you giving up for these guys? On a low risk contract, Franzen could very well impress. The point is, it's all a matter is that there are defensive options out there. It's just a matter of finding them. Where? I can't think of one team in the entire NHL that has said, hey, that's good, he fell down. I can't think of one team in the NHL, and I know Shadow was voting for the Islanders. I can't think of one team in the NHL that has said, we're looking to move out a defenseman. We're willing to move a top 4 guy to get help up front. It doesn't happen. Top 4 defensemen are not available. Well, let's take a look at depth charts. These are the top 4 defensemen right now on the depth chart of each team. I'll avoid guys who are currently injured or on the just inactive list. Okay, so, or hell with it. I'm going to keep the guys in that are out for less than a week. They're not in the injured reserve. So Anaheim's top 4 is Vatanen, Fowler, Lindholm, and Bieksa. Bieksa is not a top 4 anymore. Arizona, Ekman Larson, Goligoski, Stone, and Chychrun. Chychrun, it's way too early for him to be a top 4 defenseman. He needs to be playing bottom 2. Arizona is in the shitter right now. Just awful. Boston, Krug, Chara, McQuaid, and Carlo. McQuaid is not a top 4 defenseman at all, and neither of the Millers are top 4 defensemen. Neither Colin nor Kevin. Buffalo, their top 4 is displayed here as Ristolainen, Bogosian, Kulikov, McCabe. Kulikov's out right now. They have Franzen below Josh Georges, for whatever that's worth. That's their top 4. Calgary, you've got Giordano, Brody, Hamilton, Weidman. Weidman's available. It's been loaned for a long while. Jokipaka would then jump up, and England is perfectly capable of jumping up if he has to for a while. Carolina has Falk, Hannafin, Slavin, and Hainsey. I think Carolina is looking to upgrade that top 4 if they have the chance. And Carolina, there's going to be a video coming soon on Carolina Hurricanes. Chicago, you've got Keith, Seabrook, Campbell, and Hjalmarsson. Can you compare that top 4? And top 6, you have Van Riemsdyk and Kempney. You compare that top 6 with any of the top 6s that I just mentioned, the top 4s I just mentioned. No. But that article I just read makes them all seem equal. Columbus, Seth Jones, Ryan Murray, Jack Johnson, Zach Werenski. Holy shit, that's a good top 4. Colorado, Barrie, Eric Johnson, who's out. Boscheman, Zadorov. So Chutin moves up. Are those top four? Is Boscheman still a top four in the NHL? Honest question. Dallas, Klingberg, Hamhughes, Oduya, Johns, uh, and Lindell comes up, and Jordy Ben. It's not good enough. Dallas's defense is not good enough. So, again, according to the article, those are all top four defensemen. Oduya is still top four. He's not, though. Detroit, you have Kronwall, Green, DeKaiser, Smith. Debatable that Kronwall's iffy right now. Edmonton, you got Larson, Sekera, Clefbaum, Russell. Davidson's in the mix. Greibe has been playing relatively well. Benning's up there now. Nurse is on the inactive. Like, you've got good depth. Why trade Davidson right now? I don't get it. Florida, Ekblad, Yandel, Demers, Pisek. None of those guys are available right now. Matheson, you're not going to get Matheson in a trade. Not going to happen. LA, you've got Doughty, Muzzin, Martinez, and McNabb. That's their top four. They would probably appreciate a top four defenseman to bump down McNabb a little bit. Minnesota, Suter, Spurgeon, Scandella, and Dumba. Brodin is in that top four too. There's a lot of movement in there, and that's a fantastic blue line that they put together. Montreal, Weber, Markov, who's on the inactive list, Bolya, Emelin, Petrie. So Petrie shows us fifth if Markov's playing. Nashville, Subban, Yossi, Ellis, Ekholm. That's pretty good. New Jersey, and again, these are top four. Andy Green, Damon Severson, John Moore, Ben Lovejoy. Is Lovejoy a top four defenseman right now? Is John Moore a top four defenseman right now? I don't think so. And the Islanders, Leddy, Boychuk, Hamnick, and Hickey. There isn't a number one go-to guy there. I love Johnny Boychuk. I've stated in other videos. He's not a number one. Rangers, you got McDonough, Girardi, Klein, and Stahl. There's a lot of people who will tell you the underlying numbers for Stahl have been terrible, for whatever that's worth. In Ottawa, you've got Carlson, Phaneuf. Let that sink in. Mathot and Ceci. Phaneuf is top four. This article that I just read to you people says top four defensemen. Yeah, there's lots of them out there. Really useful. These guys are all equal. Phaneuf. Is Phaneuf equal to Chalmerson, the number four guy in Chicago? Nope. Philly, you've got Streit, who's injured. Ghost-a-Spear, Delzato, Schultz. And you've got Provorov, Gudis, who's hurt. Manning, McDonald. A lot of good defense on this team. Pittsburgh, Letang, Mata, Dumoulin, Daly, Schultz, who's really playing well right now, considering there's been injuries on the blue line, and Alexei. San Jose, Burns, Vlasic, Martin, Braun. Number five guys, Brendan Dillon. Guarantee you, Dallas would love to have Brendan Dillon back. I love Brendan Dillon's game. St. Louis, Shattenkirk, Pietrangelo, Parayko, Bouwmeester. Number five's Edmondson. There isn't a problem in St. Louis on the blue line, as far as I'm concerned. The problem is just a lot of their up front, and I think there's something in St. Louis that's just rotten at its core right now, and I think it could drag them out of the playoffs if they don't get it fixed. Tampa, Hedman, Strawman, Garrison, Coburn. So I love Tampa. I love what Yzerman's done, but that's a weak blue line. That is a weak blue line. Nestorov and Schuster in there as well. It's a good top six. It's not a great top four. And it's your top four that very often decide how far you go in the playoffs. So there's that problem. Garrison's kind of fallen off this year. Toronto, Morgan Riley, Jake Gardner, Zaitsev, Hunwick. Hunwick is fourth on this list. I had a Polak and Carrick. I know Carrick is pretty good. Morinson is healthy. Corrado shows as number 9 on this list. So again, how does Hunwick, who's number 4 on this list, compare with any of the Chicago top 6? Vancouver, Edler. I can stop at Edler. I can stop at Edler. Edler, Tanev, Hutton, Goodbranson, who's hurt. Spiza's stepped in there. Trampkin. Washington. Carlson, Niskanen, Alsner, Orpik. And Orlov shows as number 5. It's interesting that in the article they talk about the Orpik deal. They don't talk about Niskanen because it doesn't help their argument. Because, well, yeah, Orpik was overpaid. Niskanen's played pretty well in Washington. So, you know, you only quote the guys that help your argument. And in Winnipeg, Bufflin, Myers, who's on the IR, Enstrom, Morrissey. And Chirot's played a lot of defensemen, a lot of ice time. I know he shows as number 6 on this list. So there you go. There's all 30 depth charts. This article is oversimplifying getting a top 4 defenseman. And it's making it sound like, well, there's 120 top 4 defensemen. Well, then nobody needs to acquire a top 4 defenseman because everybody has 4 defensemen. What is it with it just seems lazy. Lazy. So, you know, if you guys can come through and say, oh, well, I know this guy's got to be available, let me know. I mean, the number 1 guy in Vancouver is available. Edler, I guarantee he's available. So who takes him? Since he's a number 1 in Vancouver, can we just switch him for Duncan Keith? It's a number 1 for a number 1. Or Chris Letang. They're equal, right? No. So, again, I apologize for the length of this video, but just sometimes things that I see piss me off, and armchair GMing is one of those things. That's why I don't engage in it, because it really doesn't work. When we get close to the trade deadline, will I do it? Sure, because trade deadline time, you have sellers and buyers, and there's moves that just make sense. But to oversimplify getting a top 4 defenseman and basically say there's no excuse for a team not finding a defenseman, yes, the right defenseman's the tricky part. And nowhere in that article does it say, this guy should be moved for this. This guy can be had for this, because he doesn't know market value. Because if he did, he'd be a GM instead of writing on a website. If I knew true market value and I had all these fantastic ideas in my brain on how to fix every team, I'd be getting calls from the NHL. I'd be getting calls. You seem to know what you're doing. That would be the dream, really. But anyways, I'm going to leave it at that. If anybody asks, I'm wearing this because this is the centennial day, of course, that they're doing the throwback game with Mike Palmateer in the old style helmet and Tiger Williams on the ice. So there's some fun to be had today. So that's why I'm wearing what I'm wearing. I don't have a Detroit hat that suits this theme. This is, of course, the classic from a couple years ago, and this is, you know, a throwback to Boston's first ever logo. So, you know, I'm trying to get in the spirit of things, which is a 3-1 Detroit lead right now, which is about where things should stand when you've got a team with Lidstrom and Shanahan on it against a team with Mike Palmateer in net or Felix Potvin. It just makes sense. Anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Is there any top 4 defensemen that are available for simple, easy? This is easy. The whole article makes it sound like this is just, you can do this. GMs can do this. They're just being lazy. So who's available? Who can be had? Because Trouba was available for a long time and nobody touched him. So why? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're browsing through, and enjoy the hockey today.